Hey folks, welcome back to the Holy Comforter Episcopal Church YouTube Bible Study. I'm Jimmy Abbott, the priest here at Holy Comforter, and I have some thoughts and reflections on the gospel lesson for this upcoming Sunday, which is Luke chapter 16, verses 19 through 31. This is the famous parable of the poor man Lazarus and the unnamed rich man, which is a not so subtle hint as to where this parable will take us. Essentially, there's the poor man Lazarus and the rich man. Lazarus begs at the rich man's gate. The rich man pays him no mind. They both die. The poor man Lazarus is gathered to Abraham's bosom while the rich man descends into Hades. There's then an interchange in which the poor man in Hades cries out for mercy to Abraham, doesn't receive mercy for himself, so cries out for his brothers, and says, maybe if you go tell him this is what happens, that they won't fall into the same trap. And then there's an interchange then about essentially Abraham saying, well, if they didn't believe the prophets, then they're not going to believe if somebody even rises from the dead. You know, a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge, because we know the end of the story here. Now, a few things about this parable. A few common misreadings, I think. One is that this is primarily a parable about the afterlife. It's not that, because that's not how parables work. If this is a parable, not a story. If Jesus were just trying to scare people about what it means to go to hell, he wouldn't have told it this way, because we know that in his parables always have these surprise endings with new meanings exposed. The second is that this is simply about money. And while that's there, there's also something else going on. I think what else is going on is that Jesus is speaking about the dawning of the new age. See, it had always been the belief, the hope in the Old Testament that God was the defender of the poor. And that there was this hope that, at the last day, when the new age dawns, then God will finally care and defend the poor. And what's going on here, and we see this all throughout the ministry of Jesus, and then most powerfully in this parable, is that welcome of the poor and the outcasts is happening right now. It is not delayed to some future time or future age and some heavenly rest. It is right now that Jesus is welcoming in the poor and the outcast. And then the subtle, not so subtle message that the rich ought to get on board because this is what the kingdom of God is going to look like, is even the poor and the outcast welcomed in to Abraham's bosom. So the theme here at Holy Comforter for our pledge campaign, which is kicking off this Sunday, is a new beginning. And essentially, this is what Jesus is talking about. It's a new beginning for the age of the world, a new beginning in which these false barriers, these false distinctions between rich and poor exist, and Jesus is helping us to articulate and claim and rewrite our own lives to see that both rich and poor, both celebrated and outcast, are welcomed into this kingdom. So it's a radical reworking of what the Old Testament had always talked about. The day and age when God comes to the rescue of the poor, Jesus is saying, well, that's happening right now. So yes, there are tones of issues about life after death. There are some overtones also about money, but I think it's really about the inauguration of this new age. If you want to read some more about that and about this sort of way of seeing Jesus as the outworking of the Old Testament, but reframed in a new way, I'd recommend this book, Jesus and the Victory of God, by N.T. Wright, famous New Testament scholar in our day and age, an archbishop in the Church of England, really one of the great thinkers of our age. It's a pretty fat book, so be careful, but it's got great references in here, great ways of understanding and helping us to understand what do we mean by apocalypse? What do we mean by end times? And I think that we'll see actually that those terms are not that scary, but they're being reworked in new and exciting ways in which we do see this dawning of the new age, the age of Christ, in which all people are welcomed in to the kingdom of God, and as Lazarus was, welcomed in to Abraham's bosom. So some questions, reflections for y'all to work with this week. Who have you welcomed in, and who have you excluded, not just based on wealth, but based on any sort of category? And what could Jesus be calling you to do or to change to understand that what we are to do is to open our arms wide as Jesus did upon the cross, and to say that all are welcome in to this glorious kingdom that Jesus invites us into. Again, so wonderful to be back from a sabbatical, to be back with you, and I'm looking forward to kicking off our pledge campaign, A New Beginning, here at Holy Comforter this Sunday.